forward and he's edging his corner slip. World record.
It's too much cricket to believe that fairy tales exist. I hope for his sake that he does. It would be fantastic if he can score a century and India can win the match. I think neither is going to happen. I suspect we're going to see a bit of an anti-climax and a throw. It's more than just a way of life. Cricket is an idiom for just about everything. You'll hear people in corporate offices using.
Good evening, everybody. In addition to the presentation, I would like to say a few words about the speaker of today's event. If there is any Hyderabadi whose voice is heard the maximum, it is none other than that of Mr. Harsha Bhogle, who keeps people on to the direction. The 99 World Cup would not have been the way it was. His commentary has indeed mesmerized the Indian cricket fans all over the world. He studied at the prestigious Hyderabad Public School and did his bachelor's in chemical engineering from Osmania College of Technology. Later, when he was doing MBA from IIM Calcutta, he got an opportunity to work with Sudarshan. Apart from this, he was voted by Gentleman magazine as one of 50 men you want to know better. And the outlook. Who have changed the way their profession is perceived. With that, on behalf of IIMC and Calcutta, I would like to welcome Mr. Harsha Bhogle.
Thank you very much. You can hear me right at the back? You missed out two things in there. One is that one of the people I'm working currently with is called Parizad Zorabian. I mentioned that because I never thought those would be the perks of my job. Thanks a lot for mentioning all that. First time when I heard RPD, I thought it was a course. Now. Sure? Otherwise, I hold it in my hand.
That's okay.
Okay. I wish I'd come yesterday. I was told you have a very distinctive birthday celebration. I think what you must do is you must follow that up with his attempt to have a bath. Very interested in knowing where you got the clips for that from. Anyway, this evening started pretty well. It's not always that you get flowers, it's not always that you get them from a pretty girl, so. Maybe there is something to my profession. No, you don't have to feel embarrassed. Why don't you come here so they can see it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean it that way. It's very tough these days to know when you mean it as a compliment. You can see why I'm in a largely male profession. I'm not really good at telling people it's a compliment and actually end up embarrassing them. Okay, a couple of things. Just one or two ground rules for this evening. There's only one question I don't want at the end. You can ask me as many questions as you want on anything except on one topic, which is what can we do to improve Indian cricket? I'm a little bored of that. Also because a lot of you have very passionate, serious thoughts on that. Why can't it be like the NBA? Why can't we be like Australia? The truth is we should be. The truth is we should have two teams as good as Australia. and it's not too difficult, but I'm a little bored of talking about that, so you can ask me anything else. Okay? You can ask me who the person in the recent unfortunate happening in a Melbourne hotel was. And I'm perfectly at liberty to say I don't know. All I'm told is it's not the person we think it is. Though the person we think it is would have been quite happy to have been that person. Fast bowlers are not known to be discreet. Okay, let me tell you what I'm going to do. Seriously. Sometime back I wrote a piece in the Business Standard, and it'll give me an idea of the circulation of Business Standard. I hope not many of you have read it. The reason is I've picked up a lot of points from that to talk about today. At times it might get a bit serious, but I'm not going to talk about the lady who gave me the flowers all the time. I hope it doesn't become a sermon, but sometimes as you grow older without realizing it, you start to sermonize. So if ever I commit the cardinal sin of sermonizing, please feel absolutely free to tell me that, because in my profession people have been very blunt with me throughout my career. Especially my friend Navjot Sidhu. I have absolutely no ego, no hang-ups. Right? So that's one thing. The other is, you must make a little allowance for the fact that I'm feeling very old today. I'm feeling very antique because I made the mistake of reading the latest India Today cover story on the flight here. And basically it says that the only people in India that matter are those between 18 and 35. And a lot of us who are not in that age group like to think they are. And your assessment of yourself is often at odds with your mirror's assessment of yourself. So, don't look at my... There's two things that happen when your forehead starts to grow bigger. People mistake it for a sign of intelligence. If that was the case, George Bush should have looked like a hippie. Also, it means that before you start a live telecast, you need to put makeup in areas where you previously didn't think you needed to. And then your cameraman says, "Thoda upar, and you say, "Yeah, but that's the back of my head." So I'm feeling a bit older today, so oops, I almost got a little older. Okay. You know, my son says I had a fracture, I don't want to join. So I'll make a little allowance for that. And from time to time, I keep looking down because I don't know where the wheels end there. So essentially, I'm going to talk about what I wrote in that article. And it was called What They Didn't Teach Me at IIM on the Run. It was a feature they started, a feature I didn't agree with, because I think far too many people are concerned with what they don't teach you in IIMs. But the truth is, what they do teach you is far more valuable and far more quantity than what they don't teach you. So the only condition I put in that story was that I will do the first two paragraphs on what they actually did teach me, and then we'll go on to what they didn't teach me, because I don't want to be part of any anti-IIM bashing forum. So I'll tell you what I learned at IIMs, which was invaluable to me, and then I'll tell you what I did, which might come in handy for people who start their life on the 10th of March. 10th of March or 12th of March? 12th of March. But you don't have any -1 today, -2 today. The first thing I learned at IIM, and sorry guys, I've come with notes, okay? I don't like people who come unprepared, so I thought I'd come prepared myself. First thing you learn in television is that you must value your audience, because without your audience you don't exist. So if you're using someone's time, then you have to come prepared. So let's see, I hope I sound prepared. The first thing IIM taught me was, and incidentally I must tell you this before, and I know you're going to love this, but I got an admission letter from IIMA and a waitlist letter from IIMC. I never got a second letter from IIMC saying the waitlist has got cleared. The first thing I learned is that you belong. Once you get into an IIM, you belong. But a lot of us at IIM Ahmedabad were struggling because we came from fairly soft courses and suddenly found that everyone knew more than us at everything else. To me, getting out was a great achievement than getting in. And when I got out, I thought I belonged. I thought I'd done something in life that no one could ever take away from me. And that is something all you guys, listen, it's not going to say all you guys because we men are a little short-sighted. We don't believe that for most part of our life, until we get weak in the knees, we don't believe that another gender belongs. And then we get weak in the knees and we think guys don't exist at all. It told me that I belong and that come what may, nobody could take that away from me. So it gave me a great sense of belonging and it told me I can survive. And I think a lot of you are going to be faced with that question as you move on in life. That there will be dark days when you start to doubt yourself, and on those days you must say, I belong. And I think you must tell people that I've got something that a very large number of people in India wanted but could not get. And if I'm good enough to have got it, then I must be good. And then put that cliche on your board, form is temporary, lasts permanent. If you have bad days, don't worry, you don't become bad overnight. Best people in the world go through bad days. Who would have thought Matthew Hayden can't score a run? But he doesn't know whether to attack or to defend. We all go through times like these. When you go through times like these, then you want to clutch at what you have. And if you've passed out of an IIM, then you belong. And no one can ever take that away from you. Unless you do what fast bowlers do on tours. In which case you really don't deserve to belong anyway. So, if I say IIMA, it's because that's the only IIM that I know. But it will slip out of my tongue, but I mean it to all three because they existed then and now I'm told all six. Is it all 52 now? What is it? I thought Nabi Yadav wanted 44 in Bihar. Whatever was left of his state. Okay. The other thing I realized was, in the last 20 years I've seen a lot of talent. I've seen some awesome talent. I've seen talent that's made me drop my jaw. I've seen talent that's made me say, you're the luckiest guy in the world just to see this talent. But I've never seen a greater collection of talent than my 2 years at management school. And that includes all my travels with the Indian cricket team. That includes my travels. I know people in the Australian cricket team, but I've not actually travelled with them. But I've never seen a greater collection of talent. And I think we should realize that on odd days. You know, I went through a phase in life when I doubted myself because every corner I turned, people asked me how much test cricket have you played. Everywhere I went, people asked me how much test cricket have you played. In the south, they asked me a little more politely. In the west, a little more in your face because that's what the west in Bombay is. And in Calcutta, they often block my way and say, how much cricket have you played? Because in Calcutta, everybody in Calcutta knows more cricket than you. And I've only ever worked in 2 professions in life, and in both those professions, everybody knew more than me. One was advertising and one was cricket. So, went through a lot of days when I thought that I wondered if I belonged. And to tell you the truth, on those days, IIMA degree was my test cap. If someone told me how many test matches you've played, I said, well, I've got my test cap as well, and you don't have it. So if you've got your test cap, you can keep it. I've got my test cap, I'll keep mine. So if you're good enough to play for India, I'm good enough to have gotten an IIM, and I think you must keep that in mind at all times. That you've got a cap, which is the equivalent of a test cap, and you cannot ever take that lightly. sometimes we take what we have very lightly. You know? We don't appreciate the value of what we possess. And you start to appreciate the value of what you possess much later. We must always be aware, not in an arrogant kind of way, because the world has a way of putting the arrogant into the dustbin, but just to say that, look, I belong. And if someone tries to tell me that I don't, I do. The other, okay, let me move on to what they didn't teach me at IIM. Sometimes when you pass through elite institutions, and these are elite institutions, not in a financial kind of way, but in the quality of talent that's getting out, you don't like getting your hands dirty. Because we don't think that's us. We were not meant to do that. Right? We were not meant to get our hands dirty. That was for somebody else. That's what happens to cricketers who don't want to field and dive and catch, who only want to bat and bowl. You've got to. The world today, one of the biggest problems facing corporate India today, and my wife Anita and I, the best thing I did at IIM was to meet Anita. Which is why I asked people, so how many PGB2s are together? That's the best thing I ever did. That's the best thing I ever did. My dad thinks so as well. Which is a bit more funny. If I think it's the best thing I did, that's okay. But if my dad thinks it's the best thing I did, then he must think very poorly of what I did after. The biggest challenge facing corporate India today is to cut across the thinkers and reach the doers. We are a country of thinkers. And we've always looked down on doing things. Whether it's going at a cricket net and saying, I only bat, like, running around so the guy's not in the team, or you pay someone to run and get the ball for you. There's a certain arrogance with only batting and bowling and not fielding. But that's true in everything that we do. We don't like to do things. In the cutting edge in India today, and my wife and I do a series of corporate lectures across some of India's top corporates. We talk about lessons from winning teams in sport. And the one factor that comes out very strongly is that if you give a group of people around the world 24 hours to come up with a very important strategy document, then a group of Indians will probably do it better than most. When it comes to implementing that strategy, the same group of Indians will probably do it worse than anybody else. And corporate India is all about doing, not thinking. When you have to think, if you don't think and only do, then you're like Shahid Afridi. But if you only think and don't do, you're like two categories of people. The ancient Indian Brahmins who thought they knew everything in the world, but who only thought they must sit on a chair like this while and pontificate. And the English, from whom we take a lot of our intellectual thought. And it's nice to see that the moment English cricket moved from telling the rest of the world what they should be doing to thinking what they need to do themselves, they become a better side. England always thought they must tell the world what their faults are. It's like the good old Indian Brahmins. You tell everyone what their faults are. We need to be a nation of doers. And I don't think, at least we didn't do that. We didn't do enough of that at IIM. I can't talk too much about what happens in IIMs because I asked a couple of people for their date of birth and it seemed to coincide with my time at IIM. So I'm a little wary about that. The other thing is a lot of us come to IIMs with dreams of prosperity. One of the things that worries me most about the media reporting on IIMs is the starting salaries at IIMs. I think that's a little nonsense. I think there should be a ban against mentioning what the average salary at IIMs was, because you don't come to IIMs to earn a salary. You come to IIMs to build a career. I'm not saying that because I'm the least paid graduate from IIM of the world, but because it just didn't matter. Because don't forget you've got what it takes. And if you're thinking of the returns at this stage, I think you're forgetting something very important. So it bugs me no end, not because the starting salaries seem astronomical compared to what they were many years ago, but simply because I think everybody who talks about starting salaries and mentions average starting salaries tends to believe that IIMs are a finishing school for starting salaries, which they're not. People don't come to IIMs to earn salary checks, people come to IIMs to build careers. And I know of nobody in the world, without one exception, I don't know anybody in the world who's built a successful career and who hasn't got a paycheck for it. Or some people who don't get paychecks anymore but do all right in life as well. So if there's one lesson I want to tell you, in all seriousness, it is forget what your incomes are going to be. Till such time as you haven't built up fancy house loans or bought fancy apartments with huge outgoings, don't even worry about money. There are two things in the world today that have the power to corrupt people. And this is what I've seen in my life. I mean, your life could be completely different. Warren Buffett's life is probably even more different. Bill Gates' life is probably even more different. But the truth is that Bill Gates built software, right? The money came later. With Warren Buffett, his business wasn't money, so I don't know too much more about that because I never made that kind. But there are two things in our world that are power to corrupt. One is religion, one is money. And I found in my life that every time I did something I thought the money was good, it didn't happen. It didn't happen. I mean, it's almost got to a stage now where I say, do I want to do it or do I not want to do it? And some of you might say you're lucky to have got to a stage like that. But if you play your cards reasonably well, a lot of you will get to that stage. Not everyone can be as lucky. But you will play, if you play your cards reasonably well, you'll get to that stage. But it worries me, as I said, when people think about money too early in life. You don't even have to worry about money. I remember something that, which I was going to say right at the end, but I might as well say it while I'm here. Alan Border told me something on my first tour of Australia in 91-92, which I think should be put up in every management school everywhere in the world. It's a very simple answer, you've probably heard it already. It is take care of the runs, and the dollars take care of themselves. And I found that when you chase the dollars, the runs dry up. And I've seen that with a lot of young Indian cricketers. The biggest problem in my sport at the moment is not the opposition bowling or opposition batting, but fame and money. And Indian cricketers have to counter fame and money far, far more than they have to counter the opposition bowling. And a lot of you get into that. For heaven's sake, don't get carried away by a fancy newspaper article that says the average starting salary is now 8.248 lakhs or whatever it is. That's nonsense. You don't even have to think of that. I found in my life at least that if you chase excellence, then the reward's got to be mighty mean to stay away. And the reward is not powerful enough to stay away if you pursue excellence. Because rewards are not that clever. Money is not that clever. Money doesn't say, look, this guy's worked damn, this guy's whatever, I'll go there. Now, money chases achievement. Money chases excellence. And I found in my life, every time I said, I think I want to do this well, I got paid more than I thought I would. Today I get paid far more than I think I deserve to, but I'm not complaining. But it's not the only thing in my life. And I think for a lot of you guys, I think, you chase careers, you chase excellence and everything else. I didn't know pigeons got into that. Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah, so I get very pained when I read in newspapers about how much money people of IIMs are getting. It does two things. It creates a completely contrary picture of IIMs in the minds of the public. Because people start to get negative thoughts about IIMs and IIM students. Where they say, "Tiri ko utna paisa mila usko." Because they don't understand. Because they don't understand cost to company valuations. So don't worry too much. I found that simple cricketers who try their best every time do far better than extraordinarily talented people who flaunt their talent. And one of the things we talk about at our corporate talks, and this is what people have been working and getting up, is that the most useless and the most overrated ability in man is talent. It's the most useless and the most overrated ability. Because beyond a point, it's no good. Talent opens one door. Beyond that, what you do with your talent that matters. If you say, I am talented, you'll go that far. And I've seen far, far too many cricketers in life who are extremely talented and didn't make it. Because somehow talent prevents you from learning how to solve problems. Because till you're 19, 20, 21 and you're playing cricket, if you're extraordinarily talented, you don't need to solve problems because your talent is good enough. So when a problem comes, you don't know what to do with it. Whereas the hard-working guy who's fought his way through all the time knows what to do because he acquires grit. And grit is a far, far greater ability to possess than talent. And that's why the most talented people in the world make the stupidest captains. If you make a roll call of the most talented cricketers this game has ever seen, the greatest cricketer this game has ever seen is Gary Sobers. Since there are no Australians here, I can say that very, very confidently. If they were, I would say it even more happily. Because with Australians, by the way, if you're going to work with Australians, you must stand up to them, okay? If you don't stand up to them, they'll run all over you. If you stand up to them, they respect you. And that's one quality I think you find in most places. If someone sledges you or does the equivalent of sledging you, if you bow under, then you lose respect. I'm not saying you stand up and slap him back, but I think we need to be confident as well. So, Gary Sobers was the most gifted cricketer of all time, ordinary captain. Ian Botham was a great cricketer, very ordinary captain. Tendulkar, Lara, never been great leaders of men. The most gifted, talented people make poor leaders of men. And the reason is that you become a very great player because you're talented, because you're obsessed with yourself. And you do not know how to think about others, because you've never had to think about others. You're so obsessed with your own performance. The best leaders are people one rung lower. Was Steve Waugh the most talented player in the world? He's a fine captain. Ponting is proving it wrong, but Ponting got in a ready-made team. Captaining Australia today is like buying a size 40 shirt. You don't really work anywhere. Alan Border, who's considered God in Australia, is not the most gifted batsman of all time. Mark Taylor is one of the two best post-war captains, was not the most talented player himself. The one man who proves that wrong was Imran Khan, who was the greatest post-war captain in the world has seen. Because that was the only time Pakistan knew the meaning of the word team. Also, unfortunately, they didn't play India for a long time because that's the only other time when they know what it means to be a team. And that's why we in India rate Pakistan far higher than the rest of the world does, because they play much better against us. Anyway, so great individuals don't make great leaders, guys. And the secret of success in management careers is to be a team player today. If you're not a team player, you've got a lot of problems coming your way. Seriously, the future in a corporate life is to be a great team player. If you're not a team player, the world will have very little time for you. Because the one aspect that we find companies are giving us as a brief to talk about for their sales teams and for their management teams is team building. The need to be part of a team is becoming increasingly important in corporate India. And if you say, I'm with the IIM Calcutta, I don't think you go too far, seriously. It's best to be upfront, right? If I get too blunt, tell me, but I think it's best to be upfront. What else didn't they teach me at IIM? They didn't teach me to relax. It's going to be 5 years down the line. I find that if you can give 100% every single time, so when you're working, give 100%, when you're relaxing, give 100% as well. Because successful people are people with aware minds, alert minds. If you're carrying a tired mind every time, you're not going to do well. And that's the first lesson you learn from sport, but it's a universal lesson. Tired minds, heavily worked up minds are bad minds in sport, which is why people sledge. Glenn McGrath is one of the nicest human beings I've met. And yet, when you're on the field with him, he'll try and tell you what various members of your family did. Why? So it's a great lesson in life. Why do people sledge? Because a lot of people are going to sledge you in life as you move on. And sledging is not necessarily coming up, wagging finger on your nose and telling what a few of you. But sledging is essentially making people feel uncomfortable. And people sledge because calm minds are the most difficult minds to counter. If your opponent is absolutely calm and focused, then he's thinking only about the ball that's coming at him. And then he's a very difficult opponent. If he's angry, then he's a very easy opponent. And if you can learn to manage that anger, whether in sport or in corporate life, then you become a far more menacing personality. If you're angry, you're the easiest person to knock over. Isn't it? It's damn easy to knock over. And that's why people sledge. And that's why managing stress and relaxing hard and having alert minds, increasingly companies in India are spending an enormous amount of money in trying to learn how to get their employees to be more productive. And the reason is that if you can't manage stress, and if you can't relax, and you can't come with alert minds, then your productivity goes down and not much use. So they didn't teach me the need to manage stress, and I think it's essential. Increasingly, corporate India is a very, very competitive part of India. The private sector is the shining light of India. Indian private sector is world class in many, many areas. And for Indian corporate sector to remain world class, the people getting into the Indian corporate sector must be world class, and they are. But you've got to be able to perform. It's very, very competitive. And to perform, you must always be in control of yourself. And that, I think it's very, very important to teach management of stress. I think sometimes we fall into silly traps. And it's almost like being very macho, but I know women do it as well, so maybe that's not the right word. Of saying, I can get by with 4 hours, That's a lot of bullshit. You cannot get by with 4 hours, and you should not get by with 4 hours. Because the next day you will know that you've got by, you only had 4 hours. And time management is becoming so important all over India. And these are somehow, I get the feeling, and these are my impressions many, many years after leaving management school. But I somehow think if I'd known about this, then it might have helped me better. We don't realize, we are brash, we are easy, we think the world is a fantastic place. It's out there to be conquered, and we've got all the weapons to conquer it, right? Which in most cases is true. But in course of time, you'll find that these factors become more and more important. And if you don't start getting ready for them now, it might help. So don't tell your boss you want to sleep at 3 o'clock. Because as you know, there's been a judgment recently which says you can be sacked if you're sleeping on the job.
Yeah.
Someone read that?
Yeah.
We romanticize about working late. I don't understand corporate India. I've not had much work to do in corporate India. But I'd like to believe that if you're working late, somebody somewhere is inefficient. I'm sure there'll be days when you have to work late. But I hope we don't get caught up in this romanticism of working late. When I was at college, we'd say, you know what, I studied till 2 o'clock. But we didn't tell people that we didn't start studying till 10:30. It's still 10 minutes away. 10:30 is still 10 minutes away. The other thing I'm very particular about, and this is where you must tell me if I'm starting to pontificate. I think we're all long distance runners. Yes, we've got careers that are how long? We're passing out at 22, 23. Some at 21, but we'll pardon them their bibs. And some will passing out at 21. Carry your bibs with you. It's okay. But we're all long distance runners. And in course of time, I'll tell you one other factor that's going to become very important that a lot of people don't understand at this moment. I talked about managing stress. I'd love someone from industry to come and tell people the effect of alcohol on corporate India, the effect of fatty foods, tobacco, 38-inch waistlines. I've yet to meet someone who looks pretty in a 38-inch waistline. And the only people who are allowed 38-inch waistlines are people with hormonal imbalances. And you cannot make fun of them. But 38 and 40-inch waistlines are not the prettiest sight in corporate India. And they're not a very pretty sight when you measure your blood pressure, your cholesterol and triglycerides either. It's amazing how much of corporate India should start and get worried about cholesterol and triglycerides. And fatty food and staying fit. That's why the first question I asked when I was in the car, and listen, pardon me if you think I'm coming from a different planet, okay, but this planet exists. The first thing I asked is there a gym at IIM Calcutta? Because staying fit is going to be very, very important. And the one story I'd love to tell all of you is what happened to Anil Ambani when he went to make this huge presentation around the world, raising global money. And And he said, Mr. Ambani, if you can't take care of your health, how can you take care of your company? And he had every right to ask that question. Because in course of time, we are going to become responsible to our organizations. And you will. In 10 years, you're going to become very, very important people in your organization. Some in less than 10 years. See, you were wondering why 10 years, right? So some in less than 10 years. But staying fit will become important to your organization and to your family. You don't want your family to start getting white because you're not fit. So, the importance of fitness, I wish someone had told me that. I picked it up a little too late in life, but I think it's very important. We had only one professor at IIM Ahmedabad who talked to us about honesty and ethics. And it's very, very important. You do?
We have a department,
Department of Ethics?
separate center for
I hope there's nobody who's come there straight on the Lok Sabha. But I think as part of people who shape Indian business, and in course of time, a lot of you are going to shape Indian business, I think you have a great opportunity to influence the way people think. You will have. Don't get into your first job on whatever, the 1st of May or whatever, and start trying to influence top management and how they should think. Because that's another worry with a lot of MBAs. They like to get into ready-made cubbyholes and start doing strategy the moment they join. A lot of you hopefully will be in rural India doing sales jobs. Do it while you can. Seriously, a lot of you are in rural India doing sales jobs, do it while you can. Because I promise you, 10 years down the line, you won't want to do that. And if you do it today, you'll have an edge over people who don't want to get their hands dirty. But, what was I saying? No, I do that sometimes just to check if people are listening. But I think we've got a great opportunity to influence people. See, television teaches you to have slight presence of mind. The truth is I had forgotten. I hope you get a lot of people from outside industry to speak. Because sometimes we can get caught up into only one way of thinking. I'd love to know what A.R. Rahman's work ethic is. I think we'll look at truly fantastic Indians today. People who've done something very different, who've become synonymous with their profession. I'd love to know what A.R. Rahman's work ethic is, if they can constantly produce excellence. I'd love to know, seriously, I'd love to know. I'd love to know Vishwanathan Anand's work ethic. He's a truly global sportsman. I'd love to know his work ethic. I think it's very important to understand, meet people who have achieved excellence. You meet a lot of them in industry. No doubt, you meet a lot of them in industry. But you must try and find out from other people as well. What made them do well? And I think you'll find beyond the point that everything is pretty common. It doesn't matter whether you meet Rahman, or whether you meet Anand, or whether you meet Jerry Rao, or whether you meet Raghuram Rajan. I think you'll find that the work ethic is the same. Doesn't matter if they're cricketers or broadcasters either, but it's a little narrow field. The other big thing in corporate India is communication. We get stuck with a lot of quantity types, right? A lot of quantity types here. And quantity types are essential. But I keep thinking of my maths teacher all the time, who could solve every problem in the book, would never teach us how to do it. Or our law professor at Ahmedabad, bless his soul, was a very good lawyer, but could never interest us in law. The ability to communicate is becoming increasingly important in corporate India. Look, as you get to positions of authority, you start deciding what the company should do. But it's not much good if you can't tell people what to do. If you don't have the ability to explain your plan to people, your plan is no good. It's like a former captain of India was a friend of mine who was often criticized because the player said he doesn't give them any instructions. And you know what he said? क्या बोलूं मैं instructions? मैं जीत क्या बोलूं? इंडिया के लिए खेल रहे तो आना इंडिया के लिए खेलता है. There was one game where India needed 62 to win from 46 balls. in Kanpur in 1994. Now, please, for heaven's sake, don't tell me where you were in 94 because I'm feeling old enough already. And in the last 46 balls, chasing 62, India made something like 29 or 30 runs.
Someone had a century to complete.
And they said we had no instructions from the captain. And they said, "Kya 62 balls, 46 runs, 46 balls is 62 runs." And kya bolu unko? You have to be able to communicate today. Let me give an example from closer to our times. Look, I can only give an example of sport, that's the only thing I know here. The 2003 World Cup was a game between South Africa and Sri Lanka. Which South Africa had to win. And had they won, they would have made the Super 6. They sent out the 12th man to tell the batsman the target is 234 or whatever. Is it 235, 230, something like that. The number is irrelevant, the objective behind that is more relevant. The 234. So guess what Mark Boucher did? He hit a boundary and then very exaggeratedly defended the next ball, completely unaware of the fact that the Duckworth-Lewis tables are par tables, not winning tables. So the Duckworth-Lewis scores are par scores, not winning scores. And par does not win you a match. The captain should have communicated clearly and precisely. But the captain didn't. And South Africa went into collective mourning and they haven't come out of it since. And straight after that, Gary Kirsten came into our studios and we said, "What's the way ahead for South Africa?" And he said, "They've got to appoint Graham Smith as captain." And I said, "Wow, man, guy was not in the World Cup squad, was 22 years old. If that's the only way ahead you believe, you must be in great trouble." But that's what happens sometimes if you don't communicate your plans well enough. Nasir Hussain was excellent at it. And that's why Nasir Hussain turned English cricket around. He could even convince Ashley Giles, purely by communicating to him his role, that he had to hold 2 feet outside Tendulkar's leg stump. 60, we counted, 60 out of 66 balls were outside Tendulkar's leg stump. Because the strategy was, if you can't bowl him out, bowl him out. But it was communicated effectively and it worked. In sport and in corporate life, this communication become very, very important. Your ability to communicate, your body language. Body language is so important, because the way you present yourself, probably it matters more in my profession, because in my profession people are watching you all the time. And sometimes people look at the first half of the word body language and not the second. And you have to live with that because you can't do that yourself. I must tell you this little story before we went along. We were in South Africa, in Cape Town, 20 kilometers outside Cape Town. We had no idea what was happening. We built a studio in a beautiful part of Cape Town called Blaubergstrand, with Robben Island on one side and beautiful view of the Table Mountain on the other. We actually built it, fixed the spot, and then built a hut over there to serve as a studio. And we had no idea what's happening in India. All we were doing was doing pre-game shows, post-game shows, occasionally mid-inning shows. And then word came around that Sony are doing something very unusual. That was the first time we heard of low necklines and noodle straps. To date, I haven't seen it because we were away. So we started wondering what should we do, Purely, we had positioned ourselves differently, but purely as a pastime because it's 3.5 hours between the start of the game and lunchtime. So we had 3.5 hours to kill. It becomes easier if you're with Sidhu for 3.5 hours because then you only have to speak for 15 minutes. So we thought Sidhu being a very handsome man, and he is. Sometimes one gift takes away another. So we thought if getting female viewers was a primary objective, incidentally getting female viewers in was a fantastic way to turn statistics around. We thought Sidhu might do that as well. So we said, let's put a bare-chested Sidhu on. It created two problems. One is that all that Sidhu ever wanted in life was to match his tie to his turban. We said, okay, let's give him a tie as well. Let's put Sidhu in a tie and turban. We realized later that Sidhu had acquired his makeup fetish. And so every part of his skin that was exposed, he had to put makeup on. And so it would have meant a lot of makeup if you had to be bare-chested on Sidhu. But honestly, for someone who started off not having a clue, we have something called a com cam. It's a commentator's camera. It's a little tiny little thing there, the kind that landlords in Pune use. Just as well they didn't get the contract for the IIMC campus. So there's little things, and at the start of it, for about 10-15 seconds, just to establish who's doing commentary, you have that little shot of the commentators talking when you're trying our best to look intelligent. And Sidhu picked up the fact that that comes on about 30 seconds to 45 seconds after you come on. So we'll start putting makeup on here, which is the only part of skin that's visible, if you know. Don't see any sardars here. Let me illustrate this. There's a little bit below the lower lip, a little bit on the nose and cheeks. Listen, if at 120 it's still not grown enough, it probably won't. Sorry. It's not a bad hit trade. I've embarrassed two people on the same bench. Anyway, the point I was making was communication becoming very important these days. It sounded like a very quick change of topic, right? And increasingly, I think a lot of you should be very serious about being able to communicate. Acting in plays is the best training in the world. Because when you're acting in a play, you are helpless. It's just you. There are no props. There's no one to help you, no one to support you. If you forget your lines, then it's you and your instinct. That is it, nothing else. I found that with my limited experience of being in plays, which was thrown out thrice out of the school play, and doing 4 or 5 skits and one or two full-length plays at Ahmedabad, I found it the best training for live television. But a lot of you actually, as the media becomes more and more intrusive, and as the media more and more believes it can change the destiny of people, a lot of corporate India is having to learn to handle the media. It might help to get an idea of forming your sentences. A lot of management people don't speak English. A lot of management people speak management jargon. They don't speak English. It's a bit like doctors. When you go to a doctor and ask what's wrong with you, they'll tell you something that you can't spell and can't pronounce. But they'll never tell you what's happened to you. And I think a lot of management people in India are guilty of that as well. They don't speak English. And I think it's very crucial for people who can break down what they want to say into simple English. It's like a lot of my former cricketer friends who believe broadcasting is all about talking where the elbow should go and how the shoulder should lead and how the right leg should pivot and how something else should pivot. And sometimes I feel like reminding them, it's not a class. Cricket broadcast not a class, it's about entertainment. Why did Sidhu do so well? But I think the ability to communicate is becoming increasingly important. So I thought these are the few things that I thought that I could have done well to know, though actually I'm not a great test case because I only worked proper for 2.5 years. I worked at another place for 2 years, but that wasn't a proper corporate job anyway. And since then, I've only had a boss. I've never had anyone working under me. In fact, I'm probably the only person from the batch of 85 who's never ever had someone working under me. Seriously. By the time I spent 2 years in advertising, 2 years and a bit, 2.5 years in advertising. So they were talking of becoming senior account executive, right? Which meant there was someone else who carried the artworks around. Which is what account executives do. They like to think they do more, but effectively that's what they do. And I left. So I never had anyone working under me in advertising. Never had anyone working with me in the 2 years I worked in professional management group. And since then I work with my wife. No, I don't mean to be condescending. There are a lot of people are saying, oh, what about work without my wife? That's true. And we realize that is the best way to do it because she's far more confident and far more organized than I am. So it's just very convenient that she's the boss and not me. So I thought I'd talk to you about these things. I suspect midway through I started to pontificate a bit because people started looking at each other. But is there anything you want to ask me from here on? Please feel free. It's starting to sound more and more like a pre-placement talk now. The fact that my wife was working. Okay, I'm going to get a little personal now because that's the only thing I know best. The two turning points in my life have both come from women. First, when my mother started working, and because my mother started working, I could afford to go to a different school. And because I went to a different school, I played a lot of cricket and got into the school quiz, the school debate elocution teams. And with a combination of those two, the amount of cricket I played in school and that laid the foundation for what I'm doing now, I would never have gone to that school if my mother hadn't started working. We couldn't have afforded it. So that was a big one big change in my life. The second is, if my wife hadn't been working, I could never have gambled on myself. It wasn't very dramatic. I mean, most people like to believe that one morning I got up and ran naked through the streets of Bombay. Or one morning I got up and said, that is it, I'm going to change the world, I'm going to be a broadcaster. No, it happened in a very slow, gradual process. Because when I started freelancing in the media, it was 1990. 1990 did exist, huh? And careers in television only started in 1995. Because before that you had Doordarshan, where you could not make a career, thankfully. And no, I'm very serious about this. Had Doordarshan been a career option and I'd gone into Doordarshan as a career option, I would never ever have made it. Because I would have picked up so many bad habits that I would never have been allowed in a professional network. Television is an extremely demanding and extremely disciplined medium. Very, very disciplined, very, very demanding medium. And if you work in a very casual, low discipline medium, which is Doordarshan, you'll never be able to make it. So the truth is, my biggest qualification in '94 was that I had not worked at Doordarshan. It's absolutely true. If I had Doordarshan on my CV, I would not have been picked by TWI to work for them. Because the level of broadcasting discipline that is required doesn't exist there. The moment they use the word broadcasting discipline, something goes beep when the lights go off at Doordarshan. So yes, so without the fact that she was working, I would never have made it. But there were a couple of other factors that helped. One is she had a house in Bombay. And you know, if you don't have a house in Bombay, then you're really stuck. So you get stuck in a job purely because it allows your house to stay in. The second was, neither of us is in love with money. So we had enough to get by. And we didn't have dreams of, we didn't have to own a car by a certain time. We didn't own a car till about, first car came about 4 years into a, 4.5 years into a 2-income family. The second hand Maruti 800. Sounds very weird because I know a young producer, his first year of job on ESPN bought a Ford Icon. It's a very true indicator that times are changing. But we didn't love money. So my decision didn't have to be financial. My decision was driven by other factors. So it helped me. I found in my life that every time I've tried to do things because I love doing them, I found that the returns have come. When if you told me in 1989 I'd be shooting till 5 in the morning with Ravina Tandon, I would have believed it, right? But guess what happened after that? She got married and is heavily pregnant now. is why I have enormous respect for women. I have no doubt in my mind, and I think we should cut this crap out of our minds straight away, that they are the stronger sex. No doubt in my mind at all. They do more, and we con ourselves into thinking we're more important. If we didn't have women in life, we wouldn't be able to live a day. Seriously. Seriously, our lives would resemble hostel rooms. Not that they do the cleaning up, that's a very parochial thing to say, but as disorganized and hopeless as that. And I'm not saying that because I'm looking at 2-3 people sitting here. Yeah.
What is the CG? I should know this.
I think the generation gap here. What is CG?
What's the CG?
What is CG?
CG, GPA.
I have no idea what CG stands for. What is CG? Great cumulative grade point average. I learned very early in life. Very early in life to remember the good. Stay positive. Alright. We had a professor who taught us what we call POM more than Production Operations Management. And he's a very handsome single man who just come from Stanford. And a lot of guys in our batch were very jealous of him because every girl in our house was in love with him. But he had a very straightforward approach to life. Because a lot of us used to be very concerned about our grades. Not because we wanted to top, but because we had to stay alive. And he told me something that I remember very strongly today. Not he told a lot of people. He said, how many of you want to be in the top 13? Because we had 13 ICE calls, 13 industry calls. So if you got a top 13, you got a decent industry call then. I mean, I'm saying decent. What was decent then? It's probably a quarter of your summer placement income now. But my summer job paid me 700 rupees a month. And I was quite happy with it, actually. He said, do you want to come in the top 13? He was like asking me, do you want to score more hundreds than Tendulkar? I said, no. He said, are you scared you'll be in the bottom 5? Because if you got 2 Ds, then you went home. No, sorry, if you got an F and 2 Ds, you went home. Or if you got an F, you were allowed 1 F, you were allowed 2 Ds. I said, no, I don't think you'll get to there. He said, then how does it matter? Does it matter whether you're 57th or 123rd? I said, good man. Now, I was lucky. A lot of you are far more mature than I was. Times have changed. You guys are exposed to many, many more things than we were. When I got into IIM Ahmedabad, I just learned to open a bank account, to be honest. I never needed to. We stayed on a university campus, your parents gave you pocket money, never needed to have a bank account of your own. Until I started getting checks from All India Radio for hosting the Yuvani programs. So after 3 days, I'd get a check for 75 rupees. And you know the checks, so you put it in the bank account, right? So a bank account had to be created. So that's when I learned how to operate a bank account. So I had no idea what a debit was or a credit was.
None of us.
Honestly, when I went to IIM Ahmedabad, I had no idea what a debit was, what a credit was. What came left, what came right, what was income, what was expense, no idea. Sorry? If you still don't, I have just one word of advice for you. Do it tonight. Seriously. I had no idea I was the only engineering graduate on campus who had never ever seen a computer. I hadn't seen a computer. And one of my earliest friends, and still a very dear friend of mine, had just come from BHU IT, where they believe that there are 2 kinds of people in the world. One who know computers and one who don't. And the people who don't count. And he scared me off computers for about, look, this was 1984. He scared me off computers for about 16 years. So I would give away my computer time. It was that bad. I I became very popular for a while because I would give away my computer time. I was in awe of people who could write a 6-line program. So I didn't know accounts. I didn't know computers. People used to talk about arrays. And then we got to POM. And we had guys in our batch who just come off 2 years on the shop floor in L&T and Telco. I had no idea. You couldn't keep pace with them. So you can understand how basic my survival needs were. I was not even thinking of ranks. And that's why when I got into second year, my second year at IIM was the best year of my life till now. For 2 or 3 reasons. One is I was at peace with myself because I knew they couldn't throw me out now. I was already serious about this, seriously serious. I said, if I have made it here, then maybe I won't encounter anything more difficult than this in life. So I thought I belonged. I was damn serious about it. I thought I belonged. And I met Anita. So 3 nice things happened to me in my second year. So June 84 to March 85 was a very, very happy phase of my life. Also, I didn't have to do any, I could pick courses. So I didn't have to do any systems courses. I was one of only 2 people who didn't register for the MIS course. And I was sort of looked upon as someone who's got a mixture of jaundice and measles. not registered for MIS. Because the feeling was that the other guy had missed a deadline and forgotten. So I didn't have to do systems courses. There was not a chance in hell I could do finance courses. I wanted to, I just couldn't. I couldn't. I mean, there's something you can do and something you can't do. I couldn't. So I picked, someone was asking me what courses did you pick. We had 13 courses to pick. And it was a bit like the Indian team. When you have 8 players, they need to fill 11 spots. So I picked all the courses I could and found myself 4 short. I got by. You get by in the end. If you believe in yourself, you get by. Any PPTs now?
There's not a question really. There's 2 reasons why we and most of us watch cricket here. One, to watch Tendulkar play, and other to hear you speak about Tendulkar play.
Listen. There are 2 things about that statement of yours. The first was, I thought the statement was excellent, but the reaction betrayed reality. Now go on, you're a nice guy. Are you from Hyderabad?
Yes, I am.
It's not a bad place, land of VVS Lakshman, Pulela, Gopichand, Sania Mirza. Not bad.
Can we have a little Sachin?
Of all, I've been very privileged. One of the things I think I've been very privileged in life is to have seen Tendulkar from the time he was 14. I remember my first interview I did with him was for a magazine called Sports World in Calcutta.
Yeah.
A magazine that was way ahead of its times. It was called, Is This the Greatest Schoolboy Cricketer Ever? And we did it sitting cross-legged. And after that, Rohit Brijnath, who was the best cricket writer, best sports writer in India by a very, very long shot, and among the best in the world, came down to do another interview with him. And I remember that. The reason I'm telling you this, there's a story behind that. The questions used to be 20 words long, and the answers used to be between 1.5 and 2 words long. But he was extremely confident, and it's been a privilege to have seen him grow. Honestly, I find, in my own book, I find his last 12 months a bit inexplicable. 12 to 18 months I find it inexplicable. But sometimes genius must find its own way. Because genius thinks the way some other people cannot think. And that's why there are such few geniuses in the world. They have their own quirky ways of doing things. But it's been a privilege to watch him. I've seen him play some great innings. There was a time when, I think it came to his first 8 or 9 hundreds, and I'd seen every single one of them. and then I sort of lost count about the 10th or 11th. But there are a couple of things I loved about him. One is the ease with which he grasps things. He is enormously in love with cricket. People think that he's made it because of his talent. He's a lot of bullshit. He has the best work ethic I've seen. Extraordinary work ethic. He stayed away from his parents at the age of 12 or 13. Played 12 hours a day. And went to sleep at 8 o'clock because he had a dining table because he just had no energy left. But extraordinary passion for what he did. And in the end, if you look at the most successful people in the world, that is the one thing they have, more than anything else. They have extraordinary passion and desire to do what they do. And I saw that in him right from the time he was 14, 15. He could think about the game like 15-year-olds are not meant to think. He had extraordinary grasp of the game. And even today, when you talk to him about some things, you suddenly say, shit, I thought I knew enough about the game, you know. And he makes, just by the way he thinks. For example, on one of the shows I did, it was a Telugu birthday special and Ravi Shastri was with me. We asked him why he didn't have a runner at the World Cup. I know some of you read that part. In the 2003 World Cup, he didn't have a runner. He said, for one, I've never had a runner in my life. He said, because if I have a runner, he'll always be 2 yards behind me. Because before I have played the ball, I have already in my mind taken my first stride forward. Because only I know how slowly I have played the ball. I know where the ball is meant to go. The runner will not know where the ball is meant to go because I have put it there. And I have played it at a speed which will allow me to take a single. He will not understand my thought process because he will have to wait and see how slow the ball is going, then see where the fielder is, then decide whether to run. By which time, even at the back foot, I've done 2-3 yards. He said, do you think Schumacher starts when he sees the fifth light? The Schumacher starts when he sees the first light. The fifth light is just incidentally, just goes. It's a trigger. He doesn't start the race at the fifth light. He starts the race at the first light. He said, I start taking the run before I play the ball. And this is something you can never understand. And this is something Ravi couldn't understand. Because Ravi's been a hard-working cricketer. Ravi Shastri is someone for whom I have enormous respect, extraordinary respect as a cricketer and as a broadcaster. Because he maximizes what God gave him. And that's a great gift to have. He played 80 test matches for India. He's made 12 test hundreds for India. It's an extraordinary triumph of mind over ability. It's not that he's a dud, seriously, if you're a dud you can't play. But I'll talk about Ravi later because it's a direct contrast to lessons you learn from watching Sachin. He thought about the game differently, and Sanjay Manjrekar told me a great story about him once. They were opening the batting in a Devdar Trophy match. It was South versus West. West versus North. And North had made 280. And this comes from an era when 280 was considered a good score, not a dawdle in the park like it is now. 280 is a good score. So these guys had to get a move on. And Sanjay Manjrekar said, he was trying to get his eye in. He said, Sachin just walked across and said, things are what not there. He went over the top there. And Sanjay said, no, let's play yourself in first. He said, pitch He said, on this pitch, nothing is going to happen. Allow yourself to think that you can do it, he said. Allow yourself to think that you can play that shot and see if you can. And Sanjay said, next ball he just went over. He said, okay, let me try. He said, I would never have played that shot. He went over. And he said, straight, it went over cover for 4. And he said, I've not even thought about it. And this man's thinking is so far different from everyone else's that he has analyzed the situation differently. And do another thing he did. And sometimes ideas work and sometimes they don't. But it's how you approach a problem that often determines whether you're going to have a solution or not. If you approach a problem saying, we cannot find a solution, it's very unlikely you will find a solution. But if you say, maybe this is the way I can find a solution, you may not always find it, but you give yourself a chance of finding it. South Africa made what, 359 for 2 or 369 for 2? In the World Cup final? Australia, sorry, not South Africa. 359 for 2? So you've got to make 360 to win, right? 7.2 and over. Bowling was McGrath? Yeah. No, Gillespie had gone back. Lee? Bickle? Well, anyway, whatever. It doesn't matter who the bowling is when you make 360. Final of a World Cup. How do you win? India would have been, easiest thing in the world for India to do would have been to say, guys, we gave it a good shot. We got to the final. Let's be happy we made the final because we can't score 360. Apparently, in the team meeting, he said, "Can we score a boundary of every ball, of every over? Can we score one boundary per over? Seems alright? If you make one boundary per over, you made 200 runs in 50 balls. What's the target down to? 160 from 250 balls. Can we?" He said, "Come, let's go and try and win this match." That's why the reason he hit the second boundary of McGrath was if you don't not knock Glenn McGrath off his length in the first couple of overs, then the next 4 overs are going to go 15-20 runs max. And then your target's gone. Somebody had to knock McGrath off his line straight away, otherwise you're not going to win. And he said, "I'll do it." Because if you realize in that World Cup, in every organization, in every team, you have officially designated leaders and you have people who play the role of a leader. No, I'm not being derogatory, I'm being damn serious. These are not people who say you field here, you field there, but by their very performance, people start looking up to them to show the way. So though they are not leaders, and you find that in every organization, you'll find that in classrooms, you'll find that in groups, that even though they're not the leader of the group, by their sheer presence, they become the people to watch. And that World Cup for India was a Sachin Tendulkar story. Whether it was those innings against Pakistan and England, or whether it was the most crucial innings of all that he played in the World Cup was against Zimbabwe. The most crucial innings of all at the World Cup came against Zimbabwe. India were playing by the most charitable disposition, shit cricket by them. We had just about scraped through against Holland. We had done what we normally do against Australia in a one-day game. we just turn up, take our lunch and go home. For a while at least. And then we went to Zimbabwe to play in Harare. We don't like playing in Harare. We don't like, because the wickets are very spongy. The ball hits the deck and just stands up. It comes very slowly off the deck. Our batsmen like the ball coming on. And we've got a history of being troubled by Zimbabwe. If you remember 1999, we lost to Zimbabwe. That's where our Super 6 ended. So somebody had to make sure that we won that game against Zimbabwe. And Tendulkar played one of his best innings. He played a slow 70 or 80. Remember that? 81. Whatever he played, doesn't matter. But here is someone who can assess a situation beautifully. And that is why his last 12 or 18 months have been so completely inexplicable. He set high standards. He averaged 91.5 last year. But instead of saying wow, we're saying hang on, in 8 of those 15 innings he didn't reach double figures. Which means his mean is still pretty good, but his standard deviation is gone. And I think with most great players, you'll find in their peak that while the mean is pretty high, the standard deviation is very low. They score around their mean fairly consistently. Whereas with Tendulkar now, for the first time in his career, he's getting a 248 not out, a 241 not out, a 194 not out, a 60 not out, and taking that average up there. He's playing different cricket, but you have to give geniuses their due. They understand their game better than anyone else. But coming back to Ravi Shastri, he told me a story once that I'll never forget. India were playing in Pakistan in 82-83. There was a series where Imran Khan took 41 wickets. And India didn't have a chance over there. For many reasons. One is they were too good for us. The second is you couldn't take the ball on the pad in those days. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. It didn't matter where the ball was pitching. It didn't matter what the line was. There were no super slow-mos. There were no mats. There were no walkers. The umpire gave you all, they thank you very much and walk. I mean, batsmen on that tour, the one that followed, were given caught behind, missing the ball by 4 inches. So there were many reasons why India lost. And India were in complete disarray, not getting an opening partnership. And at one point, Gavaskar asked Shastri, a couple of days before a test match, he said, do you want to open the wedding? He said, thank you very much. He said, I figured out that if I did well there, at a time when nobody else wanted the job, then my stature would go there. If I didn't do well, I was a stopgap opener, right? But I said, if I take on this challenge, then I'm rising in the eyes of everybody. I'm not shirking. And one thing Ravi Shastri wasn't, he wasn't a shirker. And shirkers have no place in life. You will sort them out straight away. You'll find in your corporate career as you go along, you'll identify shirkers immediately. And 3 years later, you'll identify them again because they'll be down somewhere there while you'll be rising up. Shirkers have no place in life. But he wasn't a shirker. And he went and got 100. When he got 100, he just became a different player. 82, 83, 84, 85, 86 were his great years. He had 1200s in international cricket. Purely by saying, I'll stand there. I'll hang in there. It's a great attitude to have. And that's why I have enormous respect for him, both as a cricketer and now as a television professional. He's extremely professional. From the time the game, from an hour before the game starts till 45 minutes when the game ends, he's extremely professional. What he does after that, nobody wants to know. And why should we? The only people who need to know, maybe they know, maybe they don't, or whatever. But he enjoys himself. So does the other half of Shazam West. The most lovable rogue I've come across in life. Absolutely lovable rogue. He's a lovely addition to our commentary team. Vaz, sorry, I meant Vaz. Yeah.
How difficult it was for you to pick a career out of cricket? As in, played international cricket?
Yeah, I hope by the time I finish, that the one thing I will have proved to people is that while it helps to have been an international cricketer, you don't have to be an international cricketer. Cricket in India is a very arrogant sport. If you've been an international cricketer, you're also the best economist. You're the best physicist. You have a right to know everything in the world and tell the people how things should be. And if you're willing to sink that ego, then you can have a lot of things going in your favor. But I struggled a lot, because the cricketers didn't like me. Because they said, who's this guy to talk about us? Cricket is a very closed game, huh? Because I suspect anything that's a closed club is an insecure club. If you're confident, you won't worry about anything, right? You think Tendulkar is worried about what some little kid is telling about his batting? You think he's worried at all? You can never take away what Tendulkar has done, right? So how does it matter? But any closed club, if the IIMs become a closed club, and I hope they never do, it will be because they're insecure. You don't have to be insecure. But cricketers are closed clubs. So cricketers didn't like me at all. Absolutely didn't like me. And journalists didn't like me either. Because they said, why is this guy on television and not us? So I didn't realize then the extent of people's attitude towards me, which was very lucky. Because I might have broken. Because a lot of people didn't want me to be on. Sometimes, I don't know, I think if you do good to people, then you find people who do good to you. And I found, in those days, I found the people who wanted to do good to me. I worked with some fantastic producers who told me how to do things. And more than anything else, there was a friend of mine once who was watching a game, a couple of cricketers gave commentary on. And all they were talking about was whether the left foot is the pitch of the ball, whether the shoulder is leading the way, whether the elbow is up, whether he's pivoting on the hook shot, and whether the bat is forming the right angle. And he turned to me and he said, actually I was on the phone, he called me up. And he said, match dekh rahe ho? I said, haan. He said, lagta nahi school mein hum. I said, yeah, that's true. Cricket is entertainment, not education. And a lot of cricketers will tell you that it's education, not entertainment, because that's the only thing they can do. So if you can do things that either they cannot do, or in their ego they don't want to do, then you create a niche for yourself. I didn't start out planning that way, but it happened. They didn't want to do the things I was happy to do, and it turned out later that they weren't good enough to do it either. So I was able to create a niche for myself, and I then wasn't competing with them. And I like to believe, and I've never asked them this question, but I like to believe that they realized a little while down the line that if they were with me in a studio, I made them look better. Because I knew their strengths and I played to their strengths. I asked them the questions for which I knew they would have good answers. Look, 80% of the questions that I ask in a commentary box, I know the answers to. But I have to ask them. I have to ask them, because if I don't, the viewer will never get the answers to those. So I have to be the viewer in the commentary box. So I have to ask the question that viewers want an answer from. And I think they'll realize in course of time that I'm sifting things for them and in a sense playing to their strength. And now over a period of time, I know what Gavaskar is confident with, what he doesn't like. And I know what will get Jeffrey's goat and what won't. I know if I want a short answer what I should ask. I know if I have to fill for a long time what to ask. Unfortunately, Sidhu is no longer with us, otherwise that wasn't a problem. But in course of time, I would like to believe that they thought that if they work with me, they come out looking even better. I certainly think they look better. And I've never been one to talk about myself, but I'd like to think that they come off looking better on the screen with me than anyone else. I'm not trying to be the star in that commentary team. And sometimes you can actually become a star by not trying to become a star. And that is why I said, I did a program with Karan Thapar where I said I'm quite happy playing non-striker. When I was playing for my university side, I was batting 6, 7, 8. So often when I came into bat, there was 3 or 4 with me. And the key to a good score was that I was off the strike as quickly as possible. So if I got off the strike as quickly as possible, it means the better batsman got the strike. So I said, let me be non-striker. I did a great job. We used to have partnerships, decent partnerships, because I got off the strike quickly. So I said, why can't I do that in the commentary box as well? If I can get off the strike quickly, if I start asking long questions, sometimes you hear that on some of the Doordarshan broadcasts. And believe me, I'm not saying that because I'm anti-Doordarshan or because during the forthcoming India-Pakistan series you're going to see very little cricket. Because they believe that the question should be long because they'll be seen more. If you feel the need to be seen more than 20 seconds on television, you're doing something wrong. Because if you can't say what you want to, and I'm the questioner, it's rarely that I have a point of view. I've made it very clear that my point of view comes in my writings. In my writings, I'll be very firm, I have a very strong point of view. I will not have that point of view in the television box because it is not my job to have that point of view. It is my job to get the point of view of other people for the common man. I'm the conduit. So I will not have that. If I need to take more than 20 seconds to get that point out of them, it means I'm not doing a good job. Because on television, less is more. 20 seconds is an enormous amount of time on television. If you don't believe me, just stand in front of a mirror and imagine how much 20 seconds is. It's a hell of a long time. So if you can't do that in 20 seconds, you're not good enough. So I said, okay, I'll be non-striker in the commentary box. And the moment I became non-striker in the commentary box, the big guns said, this guy's not a threat anymore. So it worked fine for me. And it's been working pretty well since. And I have no intention of changing that. Also, there are ways of getting your point of view across. If I say, listen, this guy's technique is shit. I won't use the word shit on air. Instead, you can always say, this technique is a bit quirky, isn't it? What do you think? So then I'll say, we said, no, I will ask you a question. If he says yes, right, people know this guy knows what he's talking about as well. So in course of time, you learn how to frame questions so that you don't look like a dud question machine, which is what you can very easily become. Because you have to understand that I'm constantly battling credibility. Or I was. Luckily, I'm not anymore. But for a major part of my career, I was battling credibility. So the moment you don't start playing that role, then you're not putting your credibility into question. So you're right. And that's what comes with experience. The best learnings in life come from making mistakes. And sometimes we feel very shy of making mistakes. We get ashamed of making mistakes. The mistakes are the easiest things in the world. I used to get very tense on television. Everybody, if any of you have been in front of a live television camera, it's the most difficult thing in the world to do. It is petrifying. It's more difficult than writing a computer program. or balancing a balance sheet. The toughest thing in the world. And when you're scared, just ask yourself, all you guys, what do you do when you're tense? First thing that happens is, if you're batting, you start playing too many shots. If you're talking, you start speaking very fast. Because you're trying very hard to show that you're not nervous. Or you're trying to get it done with as quickly as possible. I used to speak very, very, very fast early on. And as soon as my 2-3 minute thing was over, literally I would go. Yeah. But through making mistakes, you learn. And I think the biggest key to success is embrace the mistakes you made, but don't make them again. If you don't make the same mistakes again, it's like driving on a pothole. You know, you have this pothole on the road. All of us have done that when you're going on a cycle. Yeah. Except if you live in Bombay, you know what a bicycle is. If you live in Bombay, you don't know what a bicycle is. How will you know what a bicycle is? Several things you don't know if you live in Bombay. You don't know what a bicycle is. You don't know what a cricket ground is. Because the moment they find enough space, they put a building on it. We've all gone into these ditches on the road. Then you know where it is. After a couple of times you go there, you know where it is. So even when the lights are gone, you know how to go around it. I learned in life, in television, by making mistakes, where not to go. And if you learn not to go, then you become better and better, because there's a finite set of mistakes you can make in life.